Craig Curelop, what is up, brother? Welcome to the Financial Freedom Fast podcast. What is going on, my man?
What's up, man, dude? So thank you so much for having me on, dude. And sorry again, I told you in the but I can't really smile right now. So while my emotions feel happy, I can't display it on my face. I just got like all of my wisdom teeth out yesterday. So my mouth, I just feel like a chipmunk or Alvin. What are those chipmunks called? Like Alvin,
Right.
whatever.
So I still have my wisdom teeth in, and I'm just convinced that my jaw is big enough. Did you think that for the longest time, and then there was an issue, or?
So funny enough, dude, we're doing this like weird. So my wisdom teeth, funny enough, weren't bothering me at all. I couldn't even feel them. And they were actually buried underneath my gums. But there's this thing that my wife and I are doing where we're like expanding our palates so it can help us breathe better and all that. It's like new age orthodontist without actually going through like a real surgery other than this wisdom tooth thing. And so basically in order to do that, I needed to get my wisdom teeth out because my wisdom teeth were like acting as kickstands on the backs of my teeth. So I couldn't possibly expand my palate
Wow.
without taking my wisdom teeth out. So they weren't bothering me at all, but I just had to get them out in order to do this. And so I got them all out at once because I'm just a full send kind of guy. And I'd rather deal with this pain once and go through it twice.
And hey, you're gonna be able to breathe better. Life is only getting better from here.
That's right, my man.
Oh yeah. So full send, man. You've had a pretty full send life so far, it seems like. Let's just get your 5-minute pitch life story. What have you built up at this point in your life?
Yeah. I guess where I'm at now is so pretty much 5.5 years into my journey of saying F the W-2, right? I graduated college in 2015, went out to California, worked a W-2, and just absolutely hated it. And so I lasted there for a little less than 2 years. And then in early 2017, I moved up to Denver, worked for a little company some of you may know called BiggerPockets. From there, my career and stuff just took off, right? So I was working W-2 for them for a couple of years and just starting to house hack, leveraging that W-2, leveraging my connections at BiggerPockets as best as I could to house hack and to just spread the word about house hacking to as many people as possible. And from that, a lot of people heard about house hacking. And then I got the opportunity to write the book on house hacking. And from there, I'm continuing to house hack every single year while then becoming a real estate agent, helping other people do the same. And now I've got a team of real estate agents that help people house hack all across Denver. We're expanding out to Seattle, Southern California, all these great places. So it's a blessing.
I love that. And I love in the beginning what you said is for 4 years now, you're on the fuck the W-2. You're done with that. You start on the W-2 side. And then what made you want to leave and take this jump to BiggerPockets?
It's a great question, man. So I was working at a venture debt company out in California. And what that is basically we gave like basically hard money loans to startup companies that were losing money hand over fist just to get them to the next equity raise or whatever it is. And so it sounds sexy, right? I'm living in Palo Alto, literally like neighbors with Tim Cook, no joke. Like 2 doors down, I live right next to Tim Cook.
Wow.
And it was like a really cool like thing, right? But at the end of the day, I was spending 80 to 100 hours a week at work. I was making decent money. I was making like 100 something grand a year after bonuses and all that,
Right.
which isn't bad for 22. But if you just calculated my dollar per hour, it was under minimum wage because of all the hours I was actually working. When I looked and said, okay, like I'm making a guaranteed 65,000. My boss is making basically 650,000 and his boss is making 6.5 million. So I'm doing all the work to make 1% of what my upper is making. And I was like, oh, this is just not the way to live. Started to look at, okay, what am I going to be like in 10 years if I stay on this path? I'm going to be like my boss, maybe making $650,000 a year, but 30 feet down the hallway, never spends time with his family. He's always in the office. That's just not the life I wanted to live. And then I discovered, actually, funny enough, an intern of mine introduced me to real estate. And then I started reading Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Workweek, and then learned about passive income. And from there, just snowballed into the real estate passive income thing. I was like, this is 100% what life was meant.
So you weren't a rich dad, poor dad guy from the jump. It was Tim Ferriss that put you onto it.
Yeah, I was not rich dad, poor dad. I remember listening to the BiggerPockets podcast and everybody's favorite book at the end there was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I guess I got to read this damn book. And so I went ahead and read it and I was like, oh my God, this book, like it takes everything that I have in my head. Cause like I understood all the concepts of Rich Dad, Poor Dad before I read it, but it just articulated it so well. I just like couldn't explain it. And I was like, yes, this is it. This is like the golden ticket. And I wanted to just take the ball and Gronk spike it.
So I love it's almost like a vertical integration of your career aligned with your goals. Was that the thought process you had that, hey, I want to get into real estate. Let me just apply to a ton of real estate companies, and like BiggerPockets got back to you? Did you reach out to Brandon Turner? What was the thought process there, and how'd you end up landing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I saved up a lot of PTO and I went on a trip to South America for a month, me and my good buddy. And I was just basically talking to him about real estate the whole time. He's one of my best friends still today. And he was like, dude, like, I don't care anymore. Like, why don't you just do something about it instead of talking about it? And I was like, after a month in South America, you find yourself and you're like, I'm pretty motivated when I got back. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So I went home that next weekend. I got back from South America. I applied to 100, no, two, I can't remember if it was 250 or 150 jobs, but a lot of jobs in one weekend. And all except one of those were for like $8 an hour jobs in Florida as like an assistant to a real estate agent or something like that, just to get in the door. But then my one job I applied to was just like, I applied on the BiggerPockets website to a finance role in Denver. And you know how when you apply on a website, it just feels like it goes into the abyss or whatever. No one ever responds.
You're like, yeah, no one's getting back to me on this thing.
Yeah. And so I was like shocked to see Scott Trench, who was the now CEO of BiggerPockets, but at the end,
Right.
but then was the director of operations, say, hey, like I saw your cover letter and your resume, and we would love to interview you. And I was like, holy shit, like let's do it happen. And so then obviously I took the interview and was fortunate enough to land the position.
So you made the move to BiggerPockets, and now did you learn about house hacking from Brandon, or where'd you get introduced to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember like the one episode or like the one blog post I like heard or anything like that. Like it was just, I was listening to every single episode of the Bigger podcast. And I've just imagined that a lot of people mentioned this thing called house hacking and that's how they got started. And I was very financeable. I had a good W-2 job. I had a decent amount saved up at the time but enough for 3 or 5% down, not like a 20% down. So I was like, oh,
Right.
I can get into this with 3 or 5% down. I'm definitely financeable. I've got hardly any debt except student loan debt, but like never good credit score basically. And house hacking made the most sense. So then right when I landed in Denver, I was getting coffee with people every day, pretty much Monday through Friday, meeting real estate agents, meeting lenders, meeting other people in the real estate community. So the way I can get on the feet and
Right.
start running with it.
Cool. House hacking. Let's dive into it. Some of the listeners might have never heard this term before. For the listeners that are listening or watching, Craig is the man. Craig is the house hacking god here. He wrote the book, we mentioned it earlier, The House Hacking Strategy, that has catapulted myself, many other current real estate entrepreneurs into real estate from a highly repeatable and profitable rent eliminating system. So let's dive into this, Craig. What is the house hacking strategy from the man himself?
Yeah, man. House hacking, it's a really great introduction into real estate. And so what it is, you're buying a property, 1 to 4 units for 3 to 5% down. Typically, if you're in the military, you can get it for 0% down. So for a low down payment, you're required to live there for 1 year. While you're living there, you got roommates or you're renting out the other units. If it's a duplex, triplex, or quad, that rent is paying your mortgage and you're able to live for free or pretty darn close to free. So the downside here is very little, right? Because you need a place to live anyway. You're going to have someone paying off your mortgage. You're going to probably save $1,000 to $2,000 a month, whatever your rent expense is. You're going to end up saving that. But not only that, but you're going to build equity in the property. You're going to get some tax advantages and you're going to be like a landlord on trading. I'd say like 95% of the people that start out in real estate investing start out house hacking and it's tried and true. I have never met a single person in the world and I've probably talked to thousands, if not tens of thousands of house hackers at this point. One of them has ever told me they regretted house hacking or they regretted buying real estate. Sure, there's ups and downs and all that, but it's just such an easy way to get started and it's life changing for me.
So you said training wheels. House hacking is like the training wheels for real estate. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I mean by that is you're going to check if you buy a rental property, 20% down, you're not going to it. You're not seeing things that are breaking, right? You're not seeing tenants maybe having arguments. You're not seeing the lawn not getting mowed and all that. And so there's a lot of things that can easily be missed. But when you're house hacking, you're going to be like, you're literally house hacking, like you're hacking up the place that you live. And so
Right.
you're there every day. You can fix things immediately. You can see how these things work. And it's just like a nice, easy transition from living on your own and having no responsibility to actually becoming a landlord and actually being responsible for your house and the maintenance and all the things that go wrong and go right.
Yeah, and living there, and I know I'm literally doing this podcast from my first house hack ever right here, that 4 unit that I live in. It's so much easier. You might be scared to manage tenants or the typical 1 a.m. my toilet broke excuse that a lot of people, which I have never gotten in any of my investing, but it makes it so much easier for you to be able to manage your tenants, to see what's going on, and to keep you less scared and take away a little bit of the fear from real estate investing. So, Craig, you touched on this a little bit, but did you need a ton of money? Let's talk about your first deal. How much money did you need to close for someone out there who might be like, yeah, I want to do this, but I don't have $60,000 to go buy a property with 20% down. How much money did you need? And what was the financing you used? And what did the deal look like?
Yeah. Back when I did my first house hack, prices were a little different, but also I didn't know as much. Right. And so I thought that I had to buy a duplex, a triplex, or a quad. I thought
Mhm.
that was the only way. And I thought the only way to do it was through an FHA loan. And that was pretty common, like back in 2017, as to what house hacking was. That was the only way to really, there was obviously all the ways, but the only popular way was that way. And so I bought a duplex up down for $385,000. I put $17,000 down, did a 3.5% FHA loan, and that includes closing costs and all that.
Mm.
And the place was pretty turnkey, so I didn't have to put anything else into it. So all in, I was at 17 and 19,500 down. These days, that duplex is worth a lot more now, but it's not, but that's just my market, right? In your market, there could still be duplexes for 300, 400,000, and you could have those same exact numbers that I had. But nowadays, also though, is that isn't even the most efficient way to house hack, right? Some of the most efficient ways to house hack are doing like what I talk about in my book is rent by the room, or a lot of people are liking the Airbnb strategy where they live in the top and rent out the bottom on Airbnb.
Mm.
However, I think that is getting a little bit saturated, and I think you're going to see Airbnb prices, they already are starting to come down. And you pick whatever strategy works for you and just do it. But just make sure that wherever you're living, you're also getting paid a little bit to live there.
Craig actually inspired me to do a little on the Airbnb side. So just to give my story, and then I'm going to have Craig. It's a funny story, cool story. So what I do right now is my mom lives about 20 minutes away, my current house hack. So I have my apartment on Airbnb as the entire apartment. Like last night I did, this weekend I'm doing it to make $500 or so. Somebody will book my apartment for 1 night or 3 nights, and I'll go sleep at my mom's house or I'll sleep at my dad's house, and I'll make even more income off of my 4 unit, which already makes me around $2,000 a month. And I live here for free, but it's a little extra cash for me to go sleep at my mom's and get the Airbnb cash that comes in from renting out my apartment. Craig, you've got a really interesting and bootstrapping story on your first deal. Let's hear what you did and how you created some extra income.
Yeah. So mind you, at the time I was 24 years old, single young man, and very hungry to achieve financial independence as quickly as possible.
Right.
So I was all out. So like I said, I bought this duplex. My monthly payment on that duplex was like 2,200 or something like that. But I could only rent out the top unit for 1,750. And I was like, in my head, that's a successful house hack. I'm living for $400 a month, $500 a month. But in my head, the only way it was a successful house hack is if I actually lived rent free. And so what I did was I Airbnb'd out my bedroom and I slept in the living room behind like a curtain and a cardboard box room divider. My family was a couple thousand miles away in Massachusetts, so I didn't have anywhere to stay other than just that food. And I intentionally bought a futon because I knew that when I moved out in a year, I could turn that into a couch and I didn't have to spend any extra money.
Right.
All I did was just throw away the curtain and the room divider. And so I slept behind that curtain for a year. I was making $1,100 a month on my bedroom. So now I'm making $2,850 on a 2022 or $2,200 mortgage. So I'm like cash flowing $600 a month over the mortgage and living rent free.
Right.
So you're looking at a cash flow after some expenses of probably about $600 a month plus living rent free. So it's just, an amazing, that was the tool. I did
Right.
that. I just did that for 1 year, and exactly 1 year on the day, I went ahead and bought my second one.
Awesome. And so last question on actual house hacking here. The FHA, how can you did you use another FHA the year later?
No. So you can only have one FHA loan out at a time. And
Right.
I don't think I may have had it, but I don't think I had the equity to refinance and
Finance.
do it again.
Mm,
So I got smarter in year two, and I learned that I could buy a single family house for less money and make more
mm,
rent out of it, be in a better location, or at least a better neighborhood, a safer neighborhood. And so that's what I did. I bought a single family house with a 5% down conventional loan for, it was like $343,000. So
right.
do that math. It's about $20,000 as the down payment. And I was into my next house. I rented out bottom unit that I was living in before, probably making about $3,000 on a $2,200 mortgage. Then on this house, I was renting, I had my own bedroom and I was renting out all of the rooms, the four other rooms for, it was like 3,500 or something like that. And I was making, and my mortgage payment was like 2,200. And so it's just still making $1,000 a month and living rent free.
Making money, baby. That's what it's all about, and reaching financial independence. So, if you want to find out more about financial independence, about house hacking, you could check out tons of other podcasts that Craig has been. I'm sure he answers a lot of these similar types of questions. What I want to dig into is the actual financial independence part. So, what was your goal? What was the cash flow number that you needed to get to? I know it took around 2.5 years to get there. What was the cash flow number that you needed to get to? And what once you've reached that number, how did you make the decision that like, all right, I'm good now?
So yeah, my number at the time was $3,000 a month of passive income. Figured that would be about three rental properties because that's where I was about averaging was $1,000 a month. And so once I got to my third rental property, I was like, holy shit, I think I'm financially free. And I tested that out by basically maxing out by taking a $0 paycheck for 3 months and instead just maxing out my 401k. So put my entire paycheck in my 401k. So I figured, okay, if after 3 months I've got more money in my checking account than I do right now, that means I'm financially free and I can easily quit my job. And the worst thing that happens is I'm close to financially free and I just maxed out my 401k. So I figured the downsides are pretty low. So I went ahead and did that. Sure enough, I had more money in my checking account than 3 months prior. And I was like, dude, this is it. So within a month, a month after I figured that out, it was literally January of 2020. I was like, hey, Scott, love you guys, but I'm going to have to graduate. I phrase this graduate. And
You didn't Chris Voss that. You did that with your first.
yeah, I couldn't, there were thoughts of, oh, I could negotiate my salary up, but honestly,
It's not
it,
worth
they couldn't. And I don't mean to sound like a jerk. I was also starting to sell real estate on the side, helping other people get into house hacks. And I was probably closing at the time 2 deals a month. And that's 20 grand a month right there. So I was making like three times what I was making at
Right.
BiggerPockets on my part-time thing that I was doing on the side. And so I was like, unless you guys can pay me $250,000 a year, I can't stay here anymore. And they were like, definitely not. It was a mutual split. I'm still very much involved with BiggerPockets today. Scott is still a good friend of mine. And I'm good friends with a lot of people there. That sometimes you got to move on.
So I'm curious, when you did this 401k max out, no income coming in, living off of $3,000 a month passive, were you an agent at that time and had extra income coming in? Were you sending that to a different bank account just to make sure like fully passive income, I can live off of this?
Yep. Yeah. So my like rental my agent account was a just different bank account.
Right.
So yeah, and then I also that gave me some comfort as well that okay, if something did break and like I wasn't able just to live off of $3,000 a month, if something happened, like I still had this agent income as backup as well. And then it's I'm making 20,000 a month part time as a real estate agent. What would that do? What would that be like if I got my 40 hours back full time? And so I remember going on this. It was like it was the very early of January of 2020, and it was it's this thing called like Cheddar News. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay. If you go to like a doctor's office or something, it's like the news station that plays in there sometimes. It's like super sketchy. No one ever watches it. But I went on this interview by this person. They asked me what my 2020 goals were. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to sell like 36 houses. And they're like, oh, wow, that's like they're like totally doubting me. They're like, oh, that's a lot for your first year. And I was like, yeah, I sold until two a month part time. So I figured if I can just do one more a month full time, like that checks out.
Right.
And they're like, oh, okay. And then I was like, I ended up selling like over 100 houses that first, or I guess 94 houses in 2020, which is only like 10 months of being full time.
No.
And so it was just like, I blew that goal out of the water. So it felt good. And sometimes the biggest like motivation is someone that doesn't believe in you. Kind of like use that on as a chip on your shoulder.
It can push you forward. And I do want to dig into after financial freedom, after leaving and where that took you. First, before we get there, $3,000 a month. Craig, you're nuts. There's no way you can live such a low lifestyle. Where was the $3,000 a month going?
It's funny, man. So first of all, I was living for free, right? I was housing. So that was one. I didn't have a housing expense. I drove, I honestly, I rode my bike most places. So I really had a small transportation expense. I did have a car. It's a cheaper 2011 Suzuki. It gets great gas mileage.
Not finance. You bought it cash.
Yeah, I bought it cash for like $5,000 too. It was pretty
Right.
easy buy. And so the two biggest expenses that most people have, which are housing and transportation, were extremely. I still went out. So that is like a lot of, most of it was fun, right? I went out with friends. I started to have a social life again. That first year was nuts, but year 3 I was having a social life. I did some travel. I went to Southeast Asia, which the flight to get there is expensive, but once you're there, it's dirt cheap.
Right. Thailand.
Yeah. Thailand, yeah. And yeah, and that was it, man. Like I was doing grocery shopping in most cases. The only time I would go out was like with friends. I would never go out to eat on my own because I was like in a pinch or whatever. I'd meal prep. I was pretty religious. I did CrossFit. That's $150 a month. So I wasn't
Right.
spent money on things that I valued, like travel, fitness, but I wouldn't spend money on stupid stuff. I just didn't think it was necessary.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a huge way that you can decrease your expenses is go for what you value and where you pull enjoyment. So I'm the same thing. I was $5,000 a month was my number because I took a trip to Europe. It cost me $5,000 for the entire month. So that's for some reason, that's where I put my number. And now it's like when I'm living, I eat a lot of food. So I spend like 40 to 50 bucks a day on groceries. And then I have my gym memberships, and that's literally it. I go out on the weekends. I barely spend money when I go out, but if I do, like I still have a room to go out every single weekend and spend $100 on like every single night if I want to. But a lot of times it doesn't happen. And it's been crazy because I quit my job 2 months ago, and it's weird seeing my bank account go up. And I wasn't really expecting that from the jump. So let's talk about this. And this is something I'm really interested in because it's a point that I'm at right now where I quit my job and all these different opportunities are out there. How did you balance what opportunities you were going to go after, which to prioritize? And when you quit your job, did you find that, wow, my whole life opened up? What did it look like? And how did you prioritize what you were going to do?
Yeah, when I quit my job, it's exactly what it felt like. I felt like my whole life opened up, but I tried to stick to the same routine of waking up at the same,
Mm.
going, doing my workouts, doing my miracle morning. Instead of going to work, I would start like lead genning. And I was all in on the real estate agent stuff. And so I was like, okay, like people want to use me to help them to find their house hack because like I've done it enough times. I've got all the resources. I said everything. I can help anybody out. I can guide them through this whole process. That's what people were doing. They were asking, like people were coming to me. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure the world knows that I am helping people house hack. And so that's just what I did. I was on BiggerPockets. I was going on podcasts, doing all these sorts of lead generation stuff. And then before I knew it, I was call after call and I was helping tons of people and it was tons of fun. And so that's kind of what I do with my time. But there was literally a 1 month period of like when I quit my job to when COVID hit. And so in that 1 month, like me and she wasn't even my girlfriend at the time, but it was this girl I just met. We went to Mexico with one of my other crazy buddies. And she's what is now my wife. And so like that, like right then I was, oh man, I just went to Mexico for a week, like 2 weeks after quitting my job. That feels so good. It just felt so relieving to be able to do whatever I wanted to do and not have to ask anybody
Right.
to go. And then I just got back and started grinding.
When did you write the book?
So I wrote the book in October. It came out October 2019.
19. So you were, yes, you were at BiggerPockets at that.
Yep.
Got it. I was wondering if when you quit, that gave you the time and energy to do that. What have you done as far as brand building? Was that your first kind of soiree into building this I am the house hack, I am the FI guy. Was that the
Yeah, it was really the book. So I wrote the book BiggerPockets, and before that, I didn't really go on Instagram much. And then the book publisher, Katie, she was like, if you're going to do this, like, you need to make an Instagram. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, okay, I was like looking at all the, trying to figure out what handle it was. And then I remember something that Josh Dorkin, who's the founder of BiggerPockets, he came to me and was like, yeah, you're like, for some reason he came to me and said, yeah, you're really into financial independence, right? Not necessarily like building this massive real estate empire, but just like financial independence. I was like, yeah, I guess that, and like, at the time, that's where I was at. And he's, oh yeah. So he's like, you're like the FI guy. And I was like, yeah, I guess I am the FI guy. And so then that kind of stuck with me. So a couple of years later, I looked up to see if that Instagram handle was available, and sure enough, it was. And here we are.
There we go. And that was the start to it all. That
Yeah.
dog didn't know that story. So it took you, your number was $3,000. It took you 2.5 years to build to that. How many, was that 3 properties, your initial assumption? Is that how many it took?
Yeah, that's what it took. I thought it was going to take me longer, honestly. I got lucky, but yeah, that's what it took. And again, like today, I feel like I know so much more. It's like $3,000. I could do that like so much easily today because there's so
Right.
much resources out here. So you guys listening now, if you're at zero and you're either thinking, wow, 2.5 years is nothing, like you could probably do it in a year. And I think that's like why you need to be educating yourself and looking at the different ways to make passive income, like listening to this podcast, listening to other podcasts, because there's so many ways that you can achieve financial independence in probably a year or less, honestly.
Okay. So 1 year to financial independence. How would you do it?
I would,
If
before,
3,000, let's
let's
say
say,
3,000 is the number.
yeah. So let's say you need to buy, there- there's two ways that you can do this, right? One, you can either become a kick-ass real estate agent if you've got the balls to do that. Two, I would potentially do it as like a wholesaler. Would probably be the other two routes I'd go. So obviously as a real estate agent, I did it because I was making a good amount of money. Most of my passive income came in that year where I guess I was financially independent, but I went from 3,000 to 8,000 in the next year because I was a real estate agent. Now, if you don't want to be a real estate agent, the other thing you can do is become a wholesaler. And so this is a little bit what you do, I think, Matt. And you're sending out mailers, you're just trying to find deals, right? And usually these deals are people in distress. And with people in distress, usually you can at least get price or terms that you can get. And so sometimes you can pick up some seller financing. So you can buy properties with not a whole lot down. You can use other people's money to help you buy these houses. You can partner with people. And so it might take you 7, 8, 9, 10 houses, but you can acquire those in less than a year and easily have your $3,000 to $5,000 of passive income from that. And so it's just a different way to scale. I was always like, who on partners? Because someone told me that when I was like early on. And I was like, yeah, like I'd rather just have it all do it myself. Can't say that was the best advice I've ever gotten because I was scared to take on partners for a long time. So most of the stuff I just was like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it on my own.
So basically, as a summary, there is to use your active income almost like we said earlier, vertically integrated with your goal of achieving financial independence. So if you can find good deals, you could either be an agent and you could put those deals on the market, buy them and sell them, or you could sell them for that person as a wholesaler. You could make a fee, or you could just buy it. If it's a good deal, you might be able to refinance, pull out all your cash and be able to hold that unit forever and have it cash flow you and build your passive income. Craig, what does your portfolio look like today? Where are you sitting at?
So I got some property all over. We've got, I always forget, like 7 properties. It's probably like 13 units in Denver, 6 single family houses in North. We just got 2 units closed here in Northern Idaho in Coeur d'Alene. And I've got 2 plots of land in Florida, one of which we're building on, plus our primary in Idaho, whatever that is, 20 something units.
And your primary, did you say Idaho?
Yep. Yeah. So we're up in Coeur d'Alene, Northern Idaho now.
So what do you know about, completely unrelated, what do you know about potato break? You ever?
Potato? Yeah, there's potato museums. The streets are lined with potato museums. So you can just go and get a potato from each one and sit back, and you can get a baked potato, you can get some chips, you can get fries, sweet potatoes, you name it, man. They're everywhere.
So I was in my first trip that I took out to Oregon. When I reached financial independence, I met a guy. They told me about potato break. Apparently the families get a week off. Kids get a week off of school to help the families farm their potatoes. Maybe it's only in certain areas, but
Yeah, I'm just kidding. There's really no potatoes in this part of Idaho.
the streets
Yeah.
are lined there.
Yeah.
Craig, how today's market? So like you found deals that could cash flow $1,000 per month off of buying one deal. And like a lot of investors will go, oh, I want $100 a door. And I thought I was crazy. I was like, my properties are making like 500 a door. I'm either calculating this wrong or I'm doing it wrong. Do you think it's still possible today to find those types of returns for someone who maybe wants to buy their first house?
Absolutely. It really depends on where you are and what strategy you want to use. So if you want to be a little creative and do rent by the room or short-term rental or medium-term rental or anything like that, then you can definitely get more cash flow per house, right? These days you have to get more creative than back early days when I was doing it or even before that. And the other thing that we have to worry about today, at least as we talk, is like interest rates are higher than they were as well. And so you're not cash flowing now nearly as much as you would be even just last year. And so what you have to do is know that these like mortgage rates aren't going to stay at 8% forever. They're going to drop back down. I think 5% is probably where we'll stay. And so know that if you buy a property now at 8%, it doesn't cash flow or cash flows $100 a month or maybe breaks even. That's okay. That's a win because when those interest rates drop, your property price is going to increase. When that property price increases, you're going to be able to refinance it at that lower price. You could do a cash out refi, or you can just do a straight term refi. Don't pull cash out, just lower your monthly payment, and then you'll be cash flowing even more. So people aren't buying now because of high interest rates, but I think that's such a short term look, and it's a foolish short term look in my opinion, because once rates drop, prices are going to go up. You're going to have the same monthly payment. It's just how it goes.
Any new trends that you see emerging in the world of house hacking?
A lot of people are doing a lot of the medium term rental stuff now in the short term rent because it is more cash flow. I'm just seeing it become a really sad.
I wouldn't bank on it.
Yeah. Like you can make that your plan A, maybe short term is your plan A, medium term is your plan B, but make sure that plan C works too. But
Right.
straight long term, people always need a place to live. But we're seeing a lot of places regulate short term rentals because there's not enough housing for people that just want to rent like normal people. And yeah, like kind of just doing long term rentals mixed with short term rentals. So the place that we've got now in Coeur d'Alene, we're still fixing it up a little bit. We're going to long term rent the large side, which is a 4-bed, 2-bath. And there's a little studio attached to it that you can lock off. And that's going to be an Airbnb. Worst case scenario, we can rent out both units, cash flow a little bit, be a little bit better than break even. Best case scenario, we're probably cash flowing $1,000 to $1,500.
There you go. So have your worst case scenarios still work out for you.
Yeah. Just at least have you break even on your worst case.
All right. So jumping into our final questions here. What is one actionable step that our listeners should take today on their path towards financial freedom?
I would say reach out to a real estate agent in your area and just ask them some questions and start developing relationships with people. I think the real estate agent, maybe a bias, but I think it's the most connected person in your team. And so the good real estate agent will know a good lender, will know good contractors, will know everything. Will have everything you need to make sure your first house hack is successful. So find yourself an investor friendly agent in your area. If you don't know how to go about doing that, feel free to hit me up. I'm at the Fly Guy on Instagram. Happy to help you find one as well. We've got a whole network of them across the country.
Oh yeah. If you're interested in house hacking, why not go to the guy himself who wrote the book on the house hacking strategy? And now last question here. What is one topic that you wish I would have asked about or covered? And how would you have answered that question? What would you have elaborated or expanded upon on that topic?
I guess one thing is financial freedom is something, it really has allowed me financial freedom allowed me to take that big risk, right? Of going full-time real estate agent. And I made in that first year, I think I made almost 10 times as much as I did at BiggerPockets. That was crazy. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I was the only one on my team and I was writing contracts, taking calls, doing showings, dealing with inspections, all this stuff. I literally, thank God that was COVID time and I couldn't travel. Like that's all I was doing was work.
Right.
And then I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. If I do this for another year, I'm going to like maybe do it one more year and then totally retire. Or I could build a team and really build a legacy and make something more out of this. So with that first year's money, a lot of that was reinvested into building the team. And so now I do some showings and stuff up here in Idaho, but in Denver, I've got an amazing team. They're all investor friendly. They're being super successful. Now I feel a lot of fulfillment, not only from helping house hackers, but helping our agents crush it in this business because they're now making 100,000 plus a year, way more than they ever could have made at
Mm.
their W2 jobs prior. And they're each helping, you know, 10 to 15 house hackers of their own. So I've got, instead of me helping 100 house hackers, I've got 15 agents all helping 15 house hackers. And that's like double, triple what I could have done. And so we're just building something so special and we really love it. And so that's where the fulfillment comes from now.
So find where you're going to get the most value for yourself, where you can deliver value for others. And possibly once you figure out what that thing is to deliver value to others, encourage other people, teach them how to do it, and go and create value for other people. I love it. So Craig, the Fi Guy, speaking of the Fi Guy, where can my listeners, watchers find you online?
Yeah. So Instagram, I'm the Fi Guy on Instagram. Definitely hit me up there. We have a podcast of our own. You'll see it behind me if you're watching this. It's called Invest to Fi. So we bring on like early stage real estate investors and take them through the journey. Matt, you around there as well. Can't
Right.
remember the episode off the top of my head, but you can definitely go listen to Matt's story in full there. And yeah, those are probably the best two places. If you're interested in working with us, thefiteam.com. That's a great way to reach out to us from our agents.
And Craig is on Investify podcast with Ziana McIntyre, who's big in the Airbnb space and doing
Medium
things
term
there.
rental.
So
She just wrote a book on medium term rentals called 30-Day Stay. Check that out if you're interested in medium term rentals.
cool. And be sure to check out Craig's book too, The House Hacking Strategy. It's a BiggerPockets book. Amazing read. And it can launch you into some awesome financial change in your life. So thank you, Craig, again for the time. And it's been a pleasure having you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Matt. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man.